Fox News alert on new fallout expected any moment now from an Easter Sunday sermon at the president's church that included a strongly worded attack on conservatives. Welcome to America Live. I'm Megyn Kelly. The White House briefing has just started, and we expect questions today about a sermon that turned strongly political yesterday with the president in attendance. Mr. Obama spent part of his Sunday listening to Pastor and Dr. Luis Leon, an Episcopal minister, who used part of his Easter Sunday sermon to suggest that conservative Christians are bigots, racists, and misogynistic, saying in part to those in the pews, quote, "It drives me crazy when the captains of the religious right are always calling people back. For blacks to be back in the bus, in the back of the bus. For women to be back in the kitchen. For gays to be in the closet. And for immigrants to be on their side of the border." Chris Direwalt is our Fox News digital politics editor and host of Power Play on FoxNews.com Live. Wow, happy Easter to you, Pastor Leon. You know, this guy, he was praised as recently as January for being so inclusive and open-minded to gays and lesbians and gay marriage, and he stepped in to fill in for the, well, he replaced the priest who got bounced from the inauguration because he had spoken out years and years earlier against gay marriage. This doesn't sound quite as inclusive.
Well, look, there is, on the left, shall we say, little tolerance for what liberals perceive as intolerance, and they believe that those denominations and those Christians who are opposed to full status in marriage, in clergy, investiture, in those things for people who are open, practicing homosexuals, they think that those people are not deserving of charity and not deserving of tolerance. They feel very strongly about that, and you heard that very much on display in Reverend Leon's sermon.
But this was not just about those Christian conservatives who oppose gay marriage. This was so far beyond that. I mean, I botched the quote there a little in the reading of it, but he's speaking, and by the way, he is speaking present tense, because already some of his defenders on the far left are saying he was making a historical reference. He is speaking present tense. It drives me crazy when the captains of the religious right are always calling people back. For blacks to be back in the back of the bus, for women to be back in the kitchen, for gays to be in the closet. So he mentions that issue, and for immigrants to be on their side of the border. But he is suggesting that captains of the religious right want blacks, want women, want gays, and want immigrants all to be back in the dark ages.
Yeah, and look, this is reflective of an attitude that has very much taken hold on the American left, that equates anybody who has misgivings or gainsays the idea of the same-sex marriage and the other things that liberals are very enthusiastic about now with Jim Crow, with segregation, equates those things, says that it's one and the same and that you can't make a difference. The problem, of course, is that there are many evangelicals, many Orthodox Catholics, many people who are Christians who do not feel welcome by this and who hold these views, perhaps while still, as they say on the right, to love the sinner but hate the sin. Those people probably did not feel very tolerated, very welcomed by what they heard from Reverend Leon with the president in attendance. So now the White House has to say what the president thinks about this.
Well, what a position for him to have put the president in. And I mean, I'm not attributing this to Barack Obama, who was there with his family sitting in the pews and was likely caught very off guard on this. As far as we can tell, this pastor's not known for doing this from the pulpit, but what a position to put everybody there in, having to listen to that when you go to Easter Sunday Mass and suddenly getting bombarded with an attack on the religious right, as if this man has no hand in religion and is there to preach to people about how bad those who are on the religious right really are.
Political attacks are not what anyone would expect to hear in an Easter sermon. Usually, this is what the Christians talk about, the good news. That holiday is sort of the heart of the good news. You wouldn't expect to hear a political attack. And for the president, who started going to an Episcopalian church after taking a lot of heat over his church in Chicago and the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, no doubt started going to this church that has been frequented and attended by presidents since 1816, probably thought that he was avoiding religious controversy with his occasional visits there, and instead found a pastor that wanted to to talk about those things, and not just talk about his views, but attack the views of others. And so this puts the president in a difficult spot at a moment that he is trying to get some progress on other issues. To have this come up and have the preacher say this on Easter, I'm sure was not a welcome surprise for the president.
And so now, do we sit back and wait for the chorus of those on the left who came out and hit the ceiling after Dr. Ben Carson, who is not a priest or a pastor, had the audacity to make political remarks at the National Prayer Breakfast? The chorus of it was inappropriate, it was out of place, it had no place at that particular venue. He can say what he wants when he's going to go speak to the Heritage Foundation, but you don't do this at a prayer event. Do we expect that same chorus to come out and say, Pastor, you screwed up?
No, of course not, because first of all, the Episcopalians is a very liberal denomination. They fully embrace gay lifestyle, these things. That's their deal. It's their church. And beyond that, right now, it's the only kind of intolerance that is okay, the only kind of intolerance that you will not see opprobrium for are those who are intolerant of the views of these social conservatives and folks like that. That is a bias that is not going to be punished either on the left or in much of the establishment press. This will probably get shooed by most folks.
It's really stunning. I mean, this is as the guy who just stepped in to save the president on a matter of scandal. I mean, they had chosen this reverend who was controversial. So he stepped in as the guy who would be non-controversial. And he's been a great advisor to several presidents. I mean, I don't know, he's been there since 1995. He's been at this sort of the president's church, the St. John's in Washington. And now he comes out with this attack on the religious right, suggesting they don't like blacks and they don't like women and they want them in the back of the bus and back in the... I mean, wow. All right, well, we will continue to watch this White House briefing, and we've also reached out to the church to see whether they care to clarify or offer any sort of a statement, and we'll bring all of that to you just as soon as we get it. Chris, thank you.
You bet.